I have Connie with us. Connie is a health professional, a true health professional, an OG in the Ottawa area. I think that you've been in the industry for over, 20 years, and you have been working with many, many different types of demographics in the city of Ottawa. And you actually put on a big trade show for health professionals as well. And so obviously you've been on TV, you've worked with many of our clients. And so I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to ask you some questions about what you've seen over your 20 years of fitness, because I feel like you'll have a lot of insight for a lot of our listeners about what actually happens, in the real world of a health professional and all the people that you've worked with and what you've learned and what you've seen. And we want to share those real insights, not the Instagram reel highlights. I think we'll just start with, so how many people have you worked with over in the city? So how long have you been training people in the city of Ottawa for?
So the city of Ottawa, I've been back in Ottawa since 2005, but prior to that, I was working in Toronto. So I've actually been in the industry for over 25 years. And, that's over 35,000 hours of working with people. So, I do this full time, and I've been doing it for close to 25 years.
So you've been in Ottawa and you've worked in different gyms and stuff like that, but now you run your own company, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So I worked exactly.
Gotcha. And so how long have you been running your own company for?
So I started on my own in 2007.
Okay. So you've been around a lot of people. And so how many people have you been on approximately the 35,000 hours? How many people have you seen? And what is your kind of niche demographics that commonly come to Connie for?
Yeah, I would say thousands. I mean, I don't really have a tally of a total number, but definitely thousands over the years. And my demographic has changed. I used to work with high performance athletes. I am a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So that was, my main thing. And then from there, I would say my demographic right now is, high performance for life. So high achievers, driven people that just, a lot over 35, over 40, looking to just have a more strong and vital life. And both men, women, I work in a corporate setting as well. So I work with a lot of professionals, and I still have, a lot of moms, a lot of women over 40 trying to navigate the hormone life. And so I guess that's kind of my niche.
That's good, because I'm very interested in the over 40 crowd, right? Because obviously I'm over 40 now.
Same.
And so what are some of the benefits of strength training for both women and men over the age of 40 that they've given you feedback about after working with you for, 2-3 months? What are some of the benefits that they've shared with you after learning how to actually strength train?
Yeah. And even for myself, right? So I'm 47 now, and I've always enjoyed fitness. I've always enjoyed working out, but now I really feel that we need to preserve our strength and we need to preserve our muscle mass, because we need it in everyday tasks, right? We're seeing more achy joints, more pain, a little more weakness as we age. And so the number one way to retain that is through strength training. But beyond that, our bone density. So when, we're over 40, 50, 60, and we have a fall, we're at higher risk of fractures. So as we strength train, we're now increasing our bone density. I think one of the most important things for particular women is we're trying to figure out our hormones, right? And so strength training is the number one thing for achieving that hormone harmony. I like to use harmony more than balance, because trying to balance something isn't always easy, but achieving that hormone harmony. And so we feel like ourselves, strength training is number one. And that comes right down to achieving, trying to manage our body composition, right down to our stress management, like how we feel on a day-to-day basis. I think strength training literally is number one for our brain and body.
But what do you mean by strength training? Because obviously I've talked to a lot of people over 40, and, a lot of my women crowd will say, Harry, I lift weight. And I say, okay, how much weight do you lift? And they'll be like 5 pounds. So when you say strength training, can you give people a kind of an idea? Is that lifting as much, are you doing progressive overload where you're trying to raise the weight every week? So give us a little bit of a breakdown of what that means to actually be strength training. Right?
Great
it's
question.
Not lifting 500 pounds. We know that.
No. But... And I love that, because that's a great question. There's such a spectrum, and there's still so many women that are afraid to lift weights because of all the myths that have been out there for years. And so strength training, to me, as a female strength coach, as a coach who works with men and women, is always about inflicting some sort of overload onto the muscle. So yes, in order for our muscles to respond in a positive way, we have to have some sort of progressive overload put on it. So what that means is we're asking our muscle to actually do some work. If we're not giving it enough weight, I mean, we carry our bodies around, right? And so when we sit down, go down the stairs, we're already loading all of our joints with our body weight. And so we can handle it. So a lot of women are afraid to lift heavy. They want to lift the 5 pounds, but if that's overload for them, that's great. But for a lot of women, that's not enough. And so we want to just ensure that we're using enough to actually see the difference that we want to make.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, I guess, so you're saying that every week they should be trying to raise the weight, right? If we were to look at it from a mom, like someone who's working out at home, I find that a lot of them like, yeah, well, I'm lifting 5 pounds forever. I'm like, well, no, try to go pick up more. So when you're saying inflict work, every week, your goal is trying to kind of raise like by a pound or 2 pound, right? To an extent.
To an extent, because also with women in particular, like we go through cycles. So there's some times during the month where we don't feel as strong, and that's fine. Then opt for the lighter, easier weights. But when you are feeling strong, because there's also a week during our month that we do feel stronger, then take advantage of that and then lift heavier. But yes, try to stay out of that comfort zone. And that's the thing. So for me, it's not about, okay, you need to add another 5, another 2. It's just like, let's feel a little bit uncomfortable at the end of that set.
Okay. And so then in terms of other habits, so I want to start digging into like what you hear from people, because I feel like, as a lot of people sitting out there, they're like, oh, is it just me? I'm like, no, everybody kind of has the same kind of health complaints and the same confusion around it. So in terms of some of the clients that you've worked with who always come back to you saying, I feel so much better, I've changed this, I've done this change. What are those 3 common changes or habits that you've seen people change and commonly will come back to you and say, hey, these 3 things, if I do them every day, always impact me and my energy, my mood, my digestion, my sleep, and my hormones. I just feel always like an 8 on 10 every day. So what are some of those 3 things that you've heard from your clients that they commonly do that make them feel optimal?
Number 1, being consistent. So being consistent with their workouts. That's the beauty of personal training, or I do a lot of group training as well, is they have that scheduled appointment. So by staying consistent, they will get their workouts in, and then they know they're going to feel better the rest of the week or the rest of the day. So if they don't have that schedule put in, it's easy to fall behind, and then they just don't feel well, right? They fall off track. And so that doesn't work very well. So scheduling it into their calendar, consistency, obviously strength training. Once they drop, some people will say, oh, I'm not going to do my strength training. I'm just going to run. And that's fine. It's movement. But what happens is they start to lose some of that functional ability and their strength. And then they realize that things are starting to hurt again. They're not feeling as strong. Things aren't responding as well. So definitely strength training is there, scheduling and consistency. And then just like always knowing why they have to do it, because there's so many days where they just, people aren't motivated, right? This whole concept of motivation, we're not naturally motivated, but the more people know why, the more people know why they're doing it and they realize it's necessary. That's where people say, you know what, I'm only here because I know I need to be here, because I know I'm going to feel better later. And that's why they keep going. So it really becomes this whole mindset thing instead of just like skipping it.
So what you're saying, so that's one thing though, but that's strength training. So one thing that you're saying is that most clients will say to you, when they strength train, they feel like they have more consistency in their day, they have the right mindset, and they have less joint pain. Okay. So what are 2 other habits that you've heard people come back to you and say, hey, when I do this, I really notice another impact?
Yeah, eating for sure. So fueling appropriately for the body. So it's not good food. It's not about good foods, bad foods. It's 100%. About knowing what foods work for them. So like I'll often hear people say, I had this because I really wanted it, but it made me feel like crap after. And so that's such an aha moment. And it loses its like, treat feel when it just doesn't make you feel good. So for sure, fueling for the body and for your digestion, that's a second one.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, sure.
What is something specific that they say? Is it that when I eat more protein? Is it that when I drink more water? Is it that when I,
Sugar.
do you know what I mean? When I say when I eat less sugar, but remember, then let's dive into what is sugar. Is that fruit? Because a lot of people say, you know what I mean? So let's give it I'm a nitty gritty guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like to dig a little bit deeper with my trainers. Like, what are they actually saying actually works? Because we know the nutrition, but I think with all of the reels and different nutritional things that we see, we only see the highlights. Don't eat sugar. You're like, and clients will say, well, I don't eat fruit anymore. It's like, wait a second.
No.
That's okay. Or
exactly.
So that's why I say, what is something like you have heard specifically that clients have done that they say that really helped?
So two things is, if they eat out a lot, right? So if they do takeout a lot, they eat out a lot, they're not food prepping, they just don't feel great. They realize that if they make real food and use real ingredients and nothing extra, they feel better. Their energy is more consistent. So I think that's one. The second one is definitely sugar in the sense of added sugar, right? So like the extra chocolate or the extra cookies or the extra cake, like in a large amount or an amount they're not comfortable with, they will always complain about feeling that within 3 days later.
So you're saying that the number one thing they say to you is strength training all the time makes them feel better. Number two is that you're saying in nutrition, the more food they make from home, the better they feel because they know what's in their food and they know how it's going to feel in their body.
That's it.
And then number three is when they reduce the intake of hyperpalatable foods. So hyperpalatable foods are the foods that once you start eating them, you can black out, eat a lot of them. So when they buy a nice little portion of it, right? So instead of buying the Costco bag of chips, buying the gas station version,
right?
They can have a little bit, but once they overeat that, they don't feel as well.
Exactly.
And then what's number three? What is number three thing that Connie hears after 20 years commonly, because I'm sure they're all the same, that people have said they do and makes them feel better?
Sleep. And it's tricky for women over 40 because sleep becomes such a big thing. So, on days they have better sleep, nights they have better sleeps, they have better workouts. And so they feel that, I hear a lot, oh, I went to bed so late last night, or, oh, I didn't get any me time. So I stayed up till, midnight watching Netflix and then I was suffering the next morning. So sleep for sure.
Yeah. And what's interesting is if they actually went to sleep, that's better than me time because they would feel more recovered in the morning. Yeah, exactly. We've demonized that, going to sleep is not me time, but watching Netflix is me time, right?
And I think that's just that, people feel that that's their downtime, right? And they're doing something they enjoy, but we know what's happening when they're watching stuff right before bed. So it's getting the brain running versus calming down. So
the thing that always gets me on the Netflix is, and it happens to all of us, I'm no better than anybody, is they'll say next episode starting in 10 seconds. You're like, and they're just leaving you out of bed. They know exactly where to cut it. And then your next
keep watching.
You're like, it's 1 a.m. You're like, you know what I mean? So, and then the next day, and then you get hungry. So now it's 12:30 or, you've watched 2 episodes. Now you're hungry. Now the debate is, should I eat something? Then you go up and get something to eat. And next thing you know, and, we have kids. So pantry's right there. You're eating a little bit of crackers. And the next thing you know, you're not hungry in the morning and you didn't sleep properly. So it's like, it's a very slippery slope.
So slippery. But yes, that is definitely the third.
It's funny because we've been talking to other health professionals and they seem to say this, there's some trends that we commonly hear, right? Is that majority of their clients didn't realize the benefits of strength training and how they would feel after. And they didn't realize that eating more whole food make them feel better. And that if they just slept 7 hours a night or more, they didn't realize that their energy levels or their 5 cups of coffee could just be linked back to their better sleep. Right?
Totally. Or how to achieve that 7, 8, 9 hours without interruption.
Right. That's a whole other ballgame.
Totally.
And so then in your world, so because we're already on that topic, what are 3 things that are non-negotiables for Connie on a daily basis when it comes to her health? What are 3 things that, and it could be something simple, but what are the 3 things that you will never let get away from your day in terms of your health?
Movement for sure. So I love daily walks outdoors, whether it's 30 or 40 minutes, doesn't have to be that long, but for sure, daily walks outdoors. If it's not a daily walk outdoors, it is strength training. So I personally like to train 3 times a week and then walk at least 5 days a week. Sometimes I'll just do my strength training So definitely movement is number one. Two is protein at every meal. So that is a non-negotiable. I have to, my breakfast has protein, my lunch has protein, my snack has protein, my dinner has protein, all of it. And then water is probably the third. There's more than three, right? But I think those are probably the top three.
And I think that we want to hit those three things because, if I ask 10 different health professionals, they're going to say three things that are maybe the same or separate. But if you have 30 of them and 15 of them the same, those are the things that we everyday people have to really say. These are the three things that that we have to make sure that we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, the one question I forgot to ask you during strength training is, so you do some form of movement every day. So I'm a big fan. I always tell people you should be doing three things. You're either going to walk, recovery day, you're either going to do a strength training day, or you're going to do a mobility day, but just don't have a zero for the day because once it gets out of your routine, you let it go.
Yeah.
What is the ideal world of strength training in terms of, so let's be a little bit specific, 40 to 50-year-old female, 2 kids, works about 45 hours a week. What would be the minimum strength training that they would need to do to see results to help them with longevity, energy, injury prevention? So would it be, 2 times 30 minutes? What is it that you've seen in your experience be the minimalist time in for a good result out?
Yeah. So minimum and sustainable that I've seen, like I've had clients that are with me for, close to over 15 years. And it is twice a week, about 50 minutes max. That's warm up, strength train, out the door is typically what most people are sustaining. So, and if they could do a bonus day, so that's during the week, right? So typically if someone comes Monday, Wednesday, and they have a chance to do an extra workout on Saturday, then that's a total bonus. But twice a week seems to be the most sustainable. But I always recommend 2 for sure, try to add a third.
And you're still recommend, like, these are 2 strength training with weights, but you're still recommending go for walks, do some kind of movement on top of that. But in terms of weights for prevention and muscle mass, recovery, performance, you're saying at least 2 times 50 minutes per week. I think that's very reasonable. I think that,
and we want to targeting each muscle group twice a week, right? So I do a lot of full bodies. And if they're 3 times a week, then I do more of a split, but I want to make sure that they're targeting each muscle group at least twice a week.
I think that's very beneficial for people to hear.
Perfect.
And then in terms of, as the holidays come up, what are some of we see that in December, sometimes people just kind of say, you know what, I'll wait for my health in January, right? What are some of the effects that you've seen clients come back to you and say, you know what, I wish I didn't just let go of everything in December? What are some of the effects that they've told you that they wish they would have done in December just to keep their standards up? Right? What are some of the negative effects that they've seen you?
It's that all or nothing mentality. It's like, oh, I'm on holidays for 2 weeks, so I'm just going to throw everything out the window for 2 weeks. And then they realize in January, they don't feel good. They don't feel good about themselves, which that's not fair either, right? It's like, it's not your fault. It's just that you just kind of fell off track. And so the biggest thing for me during the holidays is just stay consistent with what you can, have your water during the day, go for your walks during the day, get that protein in your meal. Like those aren't hard. So we don't have to have that all or nothing. I can't have that food mentality.
I think what you're saying is keep the foundation, right?
Yeah.
Like you can still drink 2 liters of water before having an alcoholic drink. You can still eat a really good breakfast and then go out with your family and have the, dessert, right? You can still strength train 2 to 3 times a week instead of just saying, you know what, I'm too busy. I'm going to keep it for January, right? Is that we see once clients let go of that foundation, it's so hard to get back into the rhythm. So we're really promoting to people, just keep that foundation. And it's great to hear that you're saying the same thing. Don't stop your regular routine because it's holidays. Have a little bit of indulgence, but keep that regular routine so that in January, you're not starting back from scratch.
That's it. Right? And if it is a busy week, because that's life, right? Life is busy and it is busy during this time of year, that's okay. It's just like, what is your end date where you're going to be like, okay, by Sunday, I have to get back on track. And for me, it's always like, let's not make it more than a week, that's typically.
No, that's great. That's great advice. This is great. So this has been, I think it's very helpful for us because a lot of our listeners, I think, are going to be in our age, that 40 to 50-year-old. And because there's lots of miscommunication and lots of information coming at them, it's refreshing to hear that the basics really win the ball game.
That's
and, strength training, cooking food from home, eating protein, lots of water, doing some form of movement every day for 30 minutes, strength training 2 times 50 minutes. These are all doable things that I feel like if we hear more about, it's going to help just everyday people feel less confused and more positive about starting the process.
That's right.
I think that's great. So tell us, where can everybody get a hold of you? If someone reaches out to you and says, you know what, I am a 45-year-old woman, I want Connie B to be my trainer, how do they get a hold of you? Welcome.
I have free calls that people can book, free 15-minute calls on my website. It's S.W.E.A.T Inc.ca. So SWEATINC.ca. And of course, I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, I can't say anything. I always like to say the best things about Connie because she's been in the business for over 20 years. Everybody who I've ever met say nothing but great things about you. You are a true pro and you are constantly learning. I saw you took a course recently, and you also educate the future of strength and conditioning and nutritionists in the city. You have a massive health show called Activate that helps professionals get educated. And I was a part of that in the beginning. So, I'm very thankful for your time. You've done a great thing for health in Ottawa, and hopefully that you keep doing what you're doing because it's amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
See you later.
Bye.